My great-grandma lived next door until I was 12 years old. Back then, she was 95 years old. Today, I'm happy to share one of her recipes and my absolute favorite, which is mackerel simmered in savory sweet miso sauce called sabano misoni in Japanese. To accompany it, we also whipping up some rice and soup. Throughout the video, I also talk about some memories with my great-grandma, so I hope you enjoy it too. I have about 400 grams worth of mackerel fillet. Please don't ask me how to fillet mackerel. I asked a fishmonger to do it for me. I'm still practicing, just like you, friends. To remove the fishy smell, first sprinkle some salt on both sides. In a way, we can draw the moisture from the mackerel, which is what's gonna bring this fishy smell. Let it sit for 10 minutes. By the way, exact measurement is written on my blog. The link is in the description box. In the meantime, we're gonna quickly whip up some wakame seaweed mushroom rice. First, rinse the Japanese sushi rice and soak them into water for 1 hour. I also like to mix the beans. This is optional, but feel free to add any beans and seeds you have on hand. I mix 1 cup of rice and 1/3 cup of beans. We have unsalted dried wakame seaweed. Soak them in water for 5 minutes to hydrate. Remember, it's gonna expand the volume by almost 3 times more after it's hydrated. For the mushroom, I will opt for shimeji mushroom and shiitake mushroom, but as always, feel free to change up any mushroom available for you. Remove the stem and just separate them by hand. For the shiitake mushroom, thinly slice them. By the time the wakame seaweed should be done soaking, strain the liquid and squeeze them. The liquid is packed full of umami taste. We're gonna save the liquid and cook the rice with it. The rice and beans have been soaking for 1 hour. Drain water and remove the moisture as much as possible. Transfer to the rice cooker. Add juice from the wakame seaweed, half tablespoon of sake, also known as rice wine, half tablespoon of mirin, and 1 teaspoon of soup stock powder. For my case, it's a comb stock powder. Top up the water until you hit the line of 1.5 cups of rice, then mix. Cover with the mushroom and cook it on regular mode. Let's check on the mackerel. Now you can see the moisture come off on the surface. At this point, pour the hot water over the mackerel for about 10 seconds just to wash off the odor and excess salt. We call this process shimofuri in Japanese. Transfer the mackerel into the ice bath to retain the umami taste. Clean the mackerel fillet by gently rubbing it. This is the final stage of prep. Unlike grilling or frying, we tend to taste more of a fishy smell when the fish is simmering, so this prep makes a huge difference in outcome. If it seems like too many steps for you, the minimum prep will be sprinkling some salt and wiping off all the moisture. Lastly, score the skin. This will help the fish to absorb all the yummy sauce as it simmers. Ginger and leeks are also 2 necessary ingredients to mute the fishy smell. Chop leeks into big bite-sized pieces. Remember to wash the dirt, which tends to get caught between each layer. We're not gonna use this green part, but this will make a good soup stock. I have a homemade soup stock recipe linked in the description box. Thinly sliced ginger, people often remove the skin, but personally, I love to have it intact for a more bold flavor. To the pan on medium heat, add some oil and place chopped leeks. Cook it until it has char on all sides. Simultaneously, we're gonna start cooking the mackerel. To the pot or deep pan like this, add water or cooking sake. Bring it to a boil. I often say you can swap sake for water or broth, but I wouldn't skip sake for this particular recipe since the sake will reduce the fishy smell and keep the moisture of the mackerel. At this point, add mackerel fillet, skin side up, followed by ginger and leeks for the pan. Cover with a kitchen towel or parchment paper. Cook it over medium heat for 5 minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna whip up miso sauce. Into the bowl, add sugar, mirin, and miso paste. I'm opting for yellow miso paste today, but I remember my great-grandma was mixing different kinds of miso paste like yellow miso plus red miso. She has no rule on what kind of miso to use. It seems like to her, every time is an opportunity to discover a new taste. I took over her mindset when it comes to cooking. Mix it until everything is well incorporated. Remove the foam or scum appearing on the surface. What do you call this in English? We call this aku in Japanese. Pour 2/3 of the sauce over the mackerel. Continue to cook it over medium-low heat for another 7 minutes with the kitchen towel on. Speaking about my great-grandma, she always had her own routine with a bit of flexibility. Once a week, she went to hair salon to keep traditional Japanese hairstyle for the kimono. And another day, she went out to practice shamisen, which is like a Japanese guitar. Even though on those days there was nothing to do, she always wear a kimono with some makeup on. She kept her busy and neat to maintain her life until 2 months before she died. It's the small things that makes life delightful. I was only 12 years old back then, but there was a lot to learn from her. Back to mackerel, it should be cooked at this point. Add the rest of the sauce. The reason why we divide it twice is that we want to keep the aroma of miso paste. The aroma is volatile, which means it escapes into the air. So first, we let the mackerel absorb all the flavor by simmering, and later on, we boost even more aroma as a finishing touch. This is totally optional, but I like to add wakame seaweed for the additional flavor and texture to the dish. I just hydrate it in water and cut it into big bite-sized pieces. Just make sure to squeeze all the water before adding in. When the sauce is thickened to your liking, which took me about 2 to 3 minutes after we add the additional miso mixture, remove it from the heat. Remember, the sauce will continue to thicken with the residual heat, so you don't want the sauce to be too thick. If you have time, let it sit for 10 minutes for the flavor to be fully absorbed. By the time, the rice should be ready. Add the chopped wakame seaweed. It's important to mince into small pieces as it's cling more to the rice when it's mixed. I forgot to tell you, when you buy the wakame seaweed, try to look for the ones without salt. If you only find the salted one, make sure to rinse off the salt before soaking into the water. Otherwise, it's gonna be way too salty, which happened to me when I just started cooking. Sprinkle some toasted sesame seeds, then one more mix, ready to be enjoyed. Enjoy the fish dipping into the sauce together with the ginger and wakame seaweed. Mackerel is surprisingly moist and tender. There is almost no fishy smell. This sweet and savory miso sauce clings to the tender fish, but the best part, in my opinion, is these leeks. Leeks are naturally become very sweet when it's cooked. It absorbs all the juice from the sauce and fish. When you bite into, it just bursts the flavor. It's just so delicious. I can't wait for you to try it. I whipped up Japanese clear dashi soup to accompany it. Because the miso mackerel is quite savory, so I keep the soup mild to balance it out. This soup is from my Japanese breakfast cookbook. If you have one, please make it together with the miso mackerel. Similar to this recipe, but using salmon, I have a miso butter salmon called janchanyaki in Japanese. I put the recipe in the description box below in case you have no access to mackerel. Do you have any particular memories with your great grandma or grandpa? Share that in the comment section below. I always enjoy reading your stories. Thanks a lot for watching and see you on the next one. Bye bye. またね。いただきます。柔らかい。美味しい。